Hello and welcome to Careers Talk Live. Rebecca, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself, like what you entails?
Introduce myself in terms of what I do, did you say? Sorry.
Yeah, like what your job title is and what it
So
entails.
my main role is, my job title for that one is Learning and Development Advisor. So that is what I currently focus on is developing managers and leaders, primarily at Nottingham Trent University, but I also do that outside the university too. So a lot of that entails delivering workshops. Clearly, they were mostly face-to-face beforehand. That's changing now in light of the current circumstances. So I'm having to get to grips with technology and advising people and also coaching managers and leaders primarily, which is probably the thing I like best about my job, is coaching people to get them to think for themselves and find their own solutions to problems and challenges and goals.
What exactly does that entail, like day to day?
So day to day, I don't know how much detail you want, but there's office work. So there's planning and preparing, delivering workshops. There'll be answering emails and signposting people to other resources that we have. They'll be talking to stakeholders and finding out what the needs of the organisation are and how we can best meet those needs, and if workshops are the right way to meet those needs. And I guess the most fun part, and can also be quite nerve-wracking as well at times, is delivering workshops. So that will be things such as helping people identify what their strengths are and their areas for improvement, what they need to do to help manage their time, manage their team better, understand their team. I might do some psychometric or behavioural profiling with them and give them some feedback on that. And then, so training and delivering workshops is a big part of my job. And the coaching side is usually one-to-one coaching, where I have formal meetings with people who have a challenge that they can't move forward with something, they feel stuck. And my job as a coach is not to advise or mentor or tell them what to do, but to try and draw out the solutions by asking questions and using different kinds of tools, and getting them to implement actions from those coaching sessions. So that's normally lasts about 5 or 6 months. We probably have about 5 or 6 meetings. And it's a one-to-one individual support to help them move forward and gain confidence. I don't know if that gives you any more of an idea of what I do.
Yeah, I mean, it does. That makes sense to me, but does that make sense to everyone else? Kind of in who's watching, like, does that make sense to everyone else? Is there anything that needs clarifying? Because certainly, like, I know that when I was younger, you just like not really told about these sort of jobs, and that they're there. Emily says she gets it. Connie says that makes sense. Cool, good. We're all good. Yeah, you've explained well, clearly.
Hopefully.
So, how long have you been doing what you're doing? Like, what's your kind of route?
Well, I've been at the university for a long time, about 15 years. My job's changed and evolved over that, but it's been pretty much delivering workshops, but it might be a different focus or with different people at different levels. And then prior to that, I had various other jobs that weren't really related to what I do, but I think I got my taste and thirst for this kind of role working overseas. I worked in Japan for about 6 years, initially teaching English as a foreign language.
Wow.
Then training the teachers and then managing the teachers. And I really enjoyed the training part of that more than anything else. So when I came back from Japan, it was always something that I thought, I quite fancy going back to that. But I didn't have a training qualification, so I didn't know what the best route was. So I did lots of other jobs in different industries, and eventually I saw this job advertised, and they took me on and invested in me getting my training qualification whilst I was there, which was very good of them.
Wow. So that's quite a varied career then in all senses of the world. It sounds like you never had a specific route that you wanted to go down. You went from being in Japan to teaching like managers and stuff, and that's quite a big step. So what kind of led to that?
I always enjoyed travel. I did a foreign language as part of my university degree, so that involved a year living abroad in Germany. And then after that, I worked in Austria for 6 months, and I still wanted to carry on traveling, but also at the same time, I'd always kind of wanted to be a teacher or an actor. So
very interesting.
I knew I didn't have any talent as an actor, so I decided to blend the two, and I did a course after university, an intensive 1-month course on teaching English as a foreign language. And having that qualification then I thought would enable me to go and teach English and travel around the world. So my intention was to travel all around the world, but as it was, I ended up I ended up getting a few jobs, but I decided to go to Tokyo because I'd never experienced a culture like that before, and it was so far removed from what I'd ever done that I ended up going there with my teaching qualification, and loved it so much that I actually stayed there 6 years, and I didn't go anywhere else after that apart from coming back to, I went back to London. So my intention of spending a year in each country didn't happen because I loved it there so much, and I like working in the organisation that I work for. So
I think that's an important thing as well. Like you can always move around, can't you? Like you, and I think that's what Richard's just said there. He says there's nothing wrong with not necessarily, and that a career path is never one direct route, and that's literally exactly the point that you made. Like I think that's so important because a lot of, certainly when I was younger as well, and I think with a lot of young people, you're kind of one set route, or you do a qualification to go into one specific career, whereas really you can kind of go down whatever route that you want to do. And Emily's got a question here. She said, did you take Japanese while you were there?
I did. I couldn't come back from living there for 6 years and not know any Japanese. It would be shameful. So yes, I took Japanese lessons after about the first year, where I realized I was going to stay a bit longer. And it was getting a bit embarrassing that I didn't really know that much, only the basics. I took Japanese lessons, and it's been a long time. It's been 20 years since I've been there, but I can still remember bits and bobs of it. Well, I went over a few years ago, and I wasn't bad. So yes, I did learn a bit of Japanese. The other thing I wanted to say, Max, is about not knowing your route, is the degree that I did at university was European studies. So there's not really an obvious route to go to. It's not like
Japan's not in Europe either.
No, I know. So it wasn't like, oh, I must do this degree to get to this job. It was really for the sake of getting a degree, if I'm honest about it. And I liked languages and stuff. So it was the enjoyment of it rather than the career focus at that point.
And that was going to be my next question in terms of like the qualification route that you took, because you mentioned that you did a degree, but I mean, obviously people are going to be at different stages of education in terms of whether they're GCSE and A-level or at degree level. And I think there's like, because people now are in training or education full-time until they're 18, then now there's a lot more routes and possibilities that you can kind of go down, apprenticeships, traineeships, going straight into work, setting up your own business. So what sort of qualifications did you have? Did you take like a conventional route or twists and turns along the way?
I took the conventional route then, so I did A-levels and then a degree. I went straight to university. I did a 4-year degree because of the language. And then I did, as I said, that teaching qualification, which was that was a month's course. And then I didn't do really much in terms of qualifications because I was working abroad. I didn't really need anything at the time. But when I came back from England and I realized that I wanted to get back into facilitation and training and stuff, I did a couple of CIPD courses, one in what's the equivalent of HR, and one in called training practice, because I thought if I don't have any specific training qualifications, it's going to hinder me. So I think my degree helped me to get the teaching job in the first place, and the teaching qualification added to that. But then that wasn't enough. I needed to go another route to get the training qualification. And it was just lucky that Trent University paid for me to do that whilst I was on the job. And since then, I mean, I've been there so long, I have got a number of other qualifications as I've gone along. So I suppose the ones that are still relevant to me now is coaching. I've got a level 5 and I'm currently doing my level 7 in senior coaching and mentoring, and psychometric training. I've got qualifications in that to be able to feed back and interpret certain psychometric tests.
And I think again with those professional qualifications that you don't really until you get to a point where you need them. So like, out of the people who are here, how many of you guys know of professional qualifications, or like what they are, how you go about getting them? I never really heard about them until you pick up a specific career route. You don't necessarily know what professional qualifications are. So for you guys who are kind of here, do you know about any professional qualifications, like what they are? Feel free to kind of write it in the chat. And do you know how you would go about getting them, or what they're for? Because I think as you've gone through quite a few and you kind of know quite a bit about them, that might be a good route to go down, which might be different from other people. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that as well.
Yeah, I didn't know what these were. I mean, the degree was the one that I knew, but the rest of them that I've done, I heard of as I went along, as I felt the need to have them, or I wanted to develop myself even further. So you don't know what you don't know, do you? Sometimes.
No, and I think that's why these are good as well, because you get a chance to learn a bit more than you would normally. Emily said, all I know is that you need them to be able to do certain things. And Connie said, what's the difference between BTech diplomas and A-levels? I think, well, BTech diplomas, I think that's just another equivalent of getting an A-level. So an A-level, you go to sixth form to get your qualification, whereas a BTech, I think, is an equivalent qualification for it. Essentially, if you want to go to university or you want to get into something, they'll ask for like a number of UCAS points, and with a BTech diploma, it'll tell you how many UCAS points you get for completing that diploma, as opposed to an A-level. And again, each A-level acquires or equates to a certain number of. So I think they're just different routes into getting the same thing essentially. But with BTech diplomas, you can generally do a wider range of things. So with A-levels, it tends to be kind of subjects that you would do at school, such as like science or maths or anything. BTechs, you can do more kind of technical skills. So you can do things such as or hairdressing or public services. Are more done in order to get like a degree or something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only route. If you can still do A-levels and go on to, and equally you can do a BTech and go on to university, or you can go on to something else.
I was going to say there seem to be a lot more options and different routes than there were when I was younger. And there's other routes that I'm more familiar with the A-level routes, but you're right about the UCAS points in terms of entry level for certain courses. But there's also things such as, which are big at the moment, apprenticeships, where you're obviously working on the job, but also studying and getting a qualification that way. there's other ways of getting into certain careers where you're shadowing or you got on the job training and so forth. So and it doesn't mean if you don't do something now, you can't do it later.
Definitely.
Know a bit more what you're doing. I mean, sometimes I say, sometimes I don't still feel that, do I really know what I want to do when I go, there's still things that I might want to try, and then I'll have to get requalified or try different routes and forms of developing myself.
And so I was going to ask, what kind of advice and tips do you have on the sort of job that you do now?
Well, you have to be comfortable speaking in front of people. So if you're not, but you want to do that, start practicing now. I was very nervous when I first started doing presentations and stuff like that. I never thought I'd end up in a job where I'm regularly standing in front of people. But the more practice I did, the better I got. So there's something about you getting confident or comfortable talking in front of people. I would say having curiosity in my job. So, you need to be able to listen and learn from other people as well, and find out where they're coming from, and understand that how you perceive things might be different from how they perceive things. I think that's really fundamental in the kind of role that I'm doing, where I'm dealing with different types of people, not just from different cultures, but also just different, they're all individuals and they've had their own
different thought processes and opinions.
So we all have different perceptions of things and different understandings. So, and different styles and so forth. So I think that's been a big part for me. So confidence, being curious, trying to understand where people are coming from, understanding yourself, self-awareness, finding out what you like and don't like, your strengths and weaknesses and so on. And I think one thing I'd probably wish I'd done a little bit more of when I was younger is being more assertive. This is generally being a bit more assertive and taking a bit of initiative more, which I don't know if that develops with time naturally as you get older, but there's some times where I'm thinking, I wish I'd just gone and done that and tried it out, not being afraid of failing. I think things have changed a bit these days and people are more open to failure, with growth mindset and thinking I will learn from this and stuff. In my day, it wasn't quite as comfortable. So
yeah, I think there is still a perception that like failing is bad, but in a way failure leads to success, because you learn as long as you learn from those mistakes and everything. So I've got a couple of more things in the chat. Richard says, my brother ended up doing a BTech diploma equivalent of 3 levels and he's just graduated from university. So obviously that kind of helps you, Connie, in that sense. And then Connie also said, do you have any tips to get better at public presentations?
Preparation is absolutely crucial. Planning and preparation, practicing all the P's, rehearsing it in front of someone and getting some honest feedback on how you're delivering it, your tone, your body language and so forth, your pace, and just actually doing them.
That's it. Yeah,
you get better and better the more you do stuff, don't you? So actually doing them. But I think if typically people are nervous of it, so if that is one of the challenges, which is absolutely normal, because it's not really a normal thing to speak publicly, is it? Really thorough preparation so that your stuff inside out. It's not learning it off by heart, but actually thinking about, these are my main points, I know what I'm going to say, and I know a lot about it, and if they ask me questions, that's because they want to know more, and it's okay if I don't know all the answers, but practice, preparation and rehearsal.
Yeah, because I've done quite a lot of presentations as well, and you do learn so much. I think one of the most important things is like when you start, if you start and you stutter over the first few words, it kind of sets the tone for the whole thing. Whereas if you start and you're confident and you speak to people, like you're going to be a lot better. And I think knowing inside out as well, that that really, really helps, because if you're not confident and you don't know what you're talking about, it will probably show, because then you can kind of talk about it at length. You don't need to follow a script or anything like that. But obviously for some people a script helps. So the main thing is to practice and to do more. That's the best way that you'll get better.
Yeah, I know your audience, know who they are. Potentially, I would advise not to learn it off by heart, because you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself if you forget it. Additional pressure, but perhaps learn your opening sentence, what you're going to say in your opening sentence, and your ending sentence, so it doesn't fizzle out. I mean, I used to run presentation skills sessions, so I could go on forever about this. The three main things are practicing and planning it, and rehearsing and getting feedback, honest feedback from people that you trust.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Did you say?
The biggest factor in helping you to get to where you are?
What was the biggest factor?
If anything, it might be a combination of a lot of things, or it might just be, there might be one thing that kind of stood out as, or maybe something you did, or something you do, or I don't know.
This isn't the biggest factor, but I think the kickstart for me was getting a qualification, was having a degree at that time. Things have changed now. So that did open some doors for me in terms of qualifications. But in terms of my skills and approaches and so forth, I would probably say that I'm quite a friendly person, and people say that I make them feel at ease very quickly. And I can adjust pretty much. There's always some people that are harder to, but I think that I can adjust my style and flex my approach to people to try and sort of tune in with them. So I think that is very helpful anyway with, certain jobs. But with my job in particular, you've got to be able to sort of get on with people and have some rapport with people, so that you're engaging with them, and a sense of humor as well. That help. Yeah, if they've got the same sense of humor as you. If not, then don't use it. But it's reading the room and reading people and trying to sort of adjust to that. It doesn't always work, but I'd say a lot of the time, and because I've got quite a lot of experience doing that, that's quite a big part of my role. And I think that's probably seen me through a lot of the roles that I've had, not just this one, but other roles that I've had.
And then I guess on the kind of flip of that, what's like the biggest obstacle that you've faced so far, and how did you overcome that?
Initially, looking for the kind of role that I've got now, is I didn't have the training qualification then. So when I was looking for jobs, they all wanted that qualification. But then, as I said, I still applied and I got through for that. So they were looking for specific qualifications there. And as is always the case, if you haven't got experience in it and people are looking for experience, it makes it very hard. But I think things are changing where people aren't necessarily looking for that more. They're looking more for attitudes and so forth. So I'm not really answering your question here. I know I'm sort of waffling. Biggest obstacle? I don't know.
There isn't one. There might not be one singular one that stands out, but I don't know.
No, I mean, it's not been a straight route, as you know, but I'm fine with that. I've had enjoyment doing other jobs and stuff, so I can't really think of one at the moment. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Not at all. If you had to do kind of anything again, like in your career, what would you change? Would there be anything that you would change?
I might have got the training qualification earlier. I was doing other jobs that were just okay, but they weren't getting me where I wanted to, but I just took them for the sake of taking a job. However, they did give me experience working in different industries. So I've worked in a lot of private industries in England before I started working at the university. And I probably would have networked a bit more earlier on. As I've grown older, I've realised the importance of networking, having connections with people, because they can be very helpful. They can help you out if you've got or challenges that you need help with. But they've helped me out with my my private business because I've got work through networks more than anything else. So I didn't particularly like networking when I was younger, and I think it's okay now. I've got, I'm more comfortable with it, but I do see it as a really important part of just getting a range of contacts there and widening your horizon, and you never know what opportunities might come from knowing people from all over the shop. So
does everyone here know what networking is and like what that entails? Because again, I feel like this is something that you're not really taught, or you don't really learn about in school or sixth form or anything like that, and you don't know that it exists until you're kind of thrown into the scenario. Well, I'll just explain anyways, just in case people don't know, because it might take a while for people to type it out. I don't know. But yeah, so essentially networking is pretty much just where you go to a group of people. So you represent, Emily says, isn't it getting as many contacts as possible? So as you encounter an issue, you have someone you can contact. Yeah, I think that's a fair explanation. So there's essentially networking meetings. So you go along to a set event or a set venue. Everyone there is representing some sort of business, and the idea is just that you speak to people, you get to know some new people in a variety of industries, and you just see whether there's any possibilities that you can work together in the future, or you might just make some friends. That's just, like, people tend to do conversation first and then business second. But I mean, some people do it the other way around, depending on, who they are. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it is. People tend to have like a business card. They bring a business card, you exchange business cards, see if there's any kind of ways that you can work together. And it tends to be smaller businesses, so like that do more networking, I would say, than larger businesses. But it might be that one day you go to that and you just have to kind of introduce yourself to people. You have to initiate conversations, which if you've never done that before, it can be a bit challenging, but you do get used to it, don't you? I think I would imagine that you found the same thing.
Definitely. And interestingly enough, this webinar now has come about from us networking and meeting at a networking event. So yes, I think it can be quite daunting if you're there by yourself and you think, now I'm going to have to go up and talk to someone. What do I talk about, and so forth. So always sort of think about asking questions is really helpful. So ask the other person questions, because people generally like talking about themselves. And have some, if that's daunting for you, have some questions ready, some typical questions ready in your bag to ask them. And I think practice makes perfect. So the more you do it, a bit like a presentation, the more comfortable you are with it. But it is, I think the first few times that I did it, I found it quite uncomfortable. Especially talking to people that you might not gel with straight away. If you immediately gel with them, it's okay, isn't it? But there'll be all different types of people. I think, I'm going to have to talk to this person now. And you have to really give yourself a bit of a push. Having said that, once you start doing it and you've got people there in your network, it is really, really helpful. And not even just people outside the organisation, but if you work in a big organisation, like I work at Trent University, with about 4,000 staff. I don't know everyone there, but I will, through events, I'll start talking to people, and then one day, they might contact me for help, or I might contact them and say they can help me with this particular challenge. So it's a really useful, perhaps a bit daunting at first, but a really useful thing to do, I would say.
Yeah, so I guess, Emily, your definition summed it up perfectly, really. Thinking about it, you summed up about 3 or 4 minutes of conversation into about 2 lines. So that's brilliant. So yeah, my last question, and then obviously we'll throw it open to any others, is what's like the most important lesson that you've learned so far?
That it's trying to understand where people are coming from. Everyone's got their story and their journey. and their background and their history, and some of the people that perhaps are more difficult to have a connection with. It's perhaps about asking questions and finding out where they've come from. So I think in being curious, I've already said that, is really important, and not making assumptions about people or judgments about people, which is easy to do, isn't it? But thinking about, trying to put yourself in their shoes, having empathy and curiosity, I would say a big learning lesson for me, and being open to having your perceptions and assumptions challenged. I think that's been really important, especially in my role. I meet so many different people from all different walks of life, and you walk into a room and you can't help but you've got your unconscious bias going on. And I'm often surprised, and I think it's being open-minded.
Yeah, that's so hard to do, because all happens in your mind. And if you think about it consciously, it's challenging, isn't it?
And I suppose they're doing the same with you, and it's about they're making assumptions about you, and thinking about how that self-awareness and getting feedback is really important. Part of that is, how am I perceived? This is how I think I come across, but other people might see me in a different light and find this bit of me annoying or this bit of me helpful, and so on. So the more open you are to getting feedback on what your strengths are and how you perceive, I think the better the more rounded you become, and the better developed you are as an individual.
Yeah,
not always easy, but I think it's very helpful.
absolutely. So yeah, as I said, that's kind of all of my questions done. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add, Rebecca, to anything that you've said, or any other tips or advice that you can give everyone. And in the meantime, if anyone here has any other further questions about anything that we've spoken about, or anything that you want to know, by all means put it in the chat, and we'll see if we can answer it.
I think the main things I've already said, but what I would say, I think we said this at the start, is not to put pressure on yourself to think I must know what I want to do career-wise. I think for me, a lot of it is about what's enjoyable for me. That's my sort of driver, but other people have different drivers. But I've spent a lot of my time thinking about, what am I going to enjoy doing? I want to live abroad. That's fun. Do you know what I mean? So that's been a big part of it. And also being flexible to changing where you're going in your career direction. I think for me, what I find quite beneficial is having this portfolio of jobs at the moment. So, I mean, I'm lucky because I work part-time. I can do other jobs. So you don't necessarily just have to do one job at one time. There might be different avenues. And for me, that's been quite a good safety net at the moment in this current climate, where some work's dried out, but I've still got other work in other areas. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense to me. Emily had 2 more questions. Why did you enjoy working abroad so much, and what were the highlights?
I just found it, well, particularly in Tokyo, but in all the other places, I just find it very exciting, seeing different buildings, different languages, different food, different cultures and different people. So every day there was something different going on. So for me, it was learning about new cultures. I found that very interesting, and meeting different people in Tokyo, not just Japanese people, but there were other people working from across the world in the same company. So it really gave me into an insight into different cultures, which I think is helpful anyway. And it was just exciting for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So hopefully that answers your questions, Emily. And if anyone else has any questions, then by all means put them in the chat. Follow us on all the socials. I can give you the details. So Instagram is the young.project, Twitter is Young We Are Young, and Facebook is Young Network Group. And also follow Trent Bridge Community Trust. And I don't know if there's anything that you want to plug while you're here, Rebecca.
If you need any coaching, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. Well, that's my main thing. The other thing is obviously Nottingham Trent University is a great university if you do want to go down that route. But that's, it's not the be all and end all. I haven't got anything else to plug. That's
no,
fine.
cool. I went to Nottingham Trent University, so
Wow.
I can vouch. It was
my husband.
pretty good. Yeah, thanks very much for watching Careers Talk Live, and I'll speak to you in the next